So after my interview on Tuesday the following week, I decided to go to Twitter and I saw Yash making a tweet about how he wanted to place an order with a delivery company and he got a minus sign in the total order. It was kind of crazy because this is actually a system in production. It's no longer about you see a job on LinkedIn, you apply, you do 100 easy replies like I used to do back then. I remember back then I used to send 100 per day and I did it for like almost 9 months. So you can imagine. And I ended up not even getting one role. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Shinade Shades and you're watching Shinade Shades. I'm really exhausted today because I've been working since the last 16 hours and I still need to notice that I still have the energy to shoot a video and share my experiences with you of what I've actually experienced within the last 6 hours. Okay, I've been interviewing a couple of candidates for an organization where I work at the moment as a head of engineering. I want to share an experience with you that will give you an opportunity to at least have an advantage compared to anyone who just wants to settle down to just be complacent about the idea of application and going through a job process. You actually decided to apply. So I'm going to be sharing some experiences with you that will give you an advantage, that will put you at a position where you need to be highly conscious and strategic on how you can be able to walk through the process of a job interview. So one of the first things I got to notice when it comes to the aspect of applications with companies is putting yourself in a position to know all about the company. Let's say, for example, you applied at a place and you are given the opportunity to actually move to the next stage of the interview. The next stage can just be all about an introduction or you're given an assessment test to do. You're placed on an idea of the fact that you are going to have an opportunity to speak with whoever in the organization. I think it's important you get to make a research about the company because it puts you at bay to understand what the company is currently doing and where they are going. And at the same time, too, you should actually look at the people who are working in the organization. And if it ends up being that the stack you are being given to work on, that is, if it was an assessment, it's kind of important you get to look at the staffs, especially the software engineers who are in the company. Profile them to an extent where you can even be able to look at their public GitHub accounts, look at their codes, look at the things that they do, because don't be surprised, most of these people, it was still via GitHub or showcasing their work on GitHub that gave them the opportunity to actually get those jobs in those companies. I don't know, it might happen via recommendation experiences, but at least one of the ways is they must have looked at your profile and your GitHub account. So look at what is similar amongst them. If nothing is similar, look at their code base and look at what they actually performed as security. Don't be surprised. You might even be better than most of these people, kind of. It's just the opportunity that they kind of had. But it's important you actually be strategic about it. Put yourself in a position of wanting to be strategic about this job interview. It's hard actually. It's it's highly competitive. And sometimes you have to put yourself at a position where you actually have the huge advantage. Put yourself in a position of being strategic. Or if possible, you can actually build relationships with people to an extent. Hey, I just said, let me connect with you, get to know you more, and all those stuff like that. So I'm not saying you should actually settle down to go and like use relationship to bribe someone to get you into the job, but it gives you an opportunity to even expand your knowledge on the various activities that are going on in the organization. You can actually look at if the company is more of like a security company, you get to look at the application, look at what they are building, like test the application. You can even help them by looking for vulnerabilities for them that will give them the opportunity to even fix those bugs themselves, kind of. So I think it's kind of important because people are actually looking for people who can think ahead and are actually strategic. It's no longer about you see a job on LinkedIn, you apply, you do 100 easy replies like I used to do back then. I remember back then I used to send 100 per day and I did it for like almost 9 months. So you can imagine. And I ended up not even getting one role. I'm there. Okay, no, I think I got one kind of. Yeah, I got one. I think it's kind of important you put yourself in the position of wanting to leverage on being strategic about this game. Like it's difficult these days. And don't be surprised, most of the people that they even pick are people who are not even so experienced like that, but they see the need to actually learn in the job while doing the job, kind of. So every job is actually kind of unique in their own way, in their practices and all those stuff. So put yourself in a position of wanting to be strategic as much as possible. Have a wide range of knowledge or crave to have a wide range of knowledge with the organization you're going to be working with and what their plan is going to be. That gives you an opportunity to engage with them while you are actually having a conversation with them in the interviews, kind of. Especially if you're having a discussion with someone who is actually technical in the business, kind of, or yeah, technical in building applications and all those stuff. So that gives you an opportunity to expand your knowledge. Understand nomenclature, like the nomenclature of your stack. I know a lot of people will put themselves in the position where they'll feel like, oh, nomenclature is too ambiguous. So um, let's imagine you're in a situation where you were not given an assessment and you were just doing like more of like a theoretical technical interview and you're being asked a couple of questions. And let's say this technical person is not that experienced like that. He just wants to get the answer without even looking at your codes. Excite yourself into the idea of understanding nomenclature. And in as much as it's ambiguous, it still evolves around our day-to-day activities of while we're actually developing what we're developing. Like for example, so imagine someone asking you what concatenation is. And concatenation is just joining two variables together. Or someone is asking you dependency injection or state management and all those stuff like that. You need to figure out how you can use your daily operations to manifest the idea of the nomenclature. And it's important you get to study them as much as possible. Just imagine they didn't have the opportunity to view your code base. Then it totally means you're a zero. You just want to be saying, I don't know all the time. Get to an opportunity where at least you can be able to get 65 to 70% of whatever they're asking you to do theoretically or creating scenarios for you theoretically. Then for the rest, you can just say, I don't know. Because imagine you're just saying, I don't know all the time. Yes, there are companies that want to leverage on the fact that you say the word I don't know to see it as to create a pathway for you to learn so that you can know. But at the same time, there are companies who are just keen on looking for someone that would replace an individual immediately and would not require you to have too much supervision when it comes to the idea of you getting into the job. So you can't just say you don't know at everything. You have to come to a point in your life where you actually get to study nomenclature, get to study the history of why this nomenclature came into play and how you can be able to leverage on and where it applies to your day-to-day activities. So imagine you come to a point where you're talking about polymorphic relationships. Polymorphic relationship is just like morphing one table to apply to respective tables. And saying polymorphic or polymorphism is a little bit kind of ambiguous to an extent. So you need to settle down to understand nomenclature, especially at cases where it's just theoretical and they don't have to see your code or it's not necessary for them to see your code. That is an extra advantage that you have over someone who is just coding and all those stuff. So and also notice that communication too also matters. Your presentation also matters when it comes to the idea of um, getting an advantage to be part of the candidates that they're going to take to the final stage. I've had the opportunity to interview people who have 10 to 15 years experience and the idea of this nomenclature, they don't even still understand it. So I'm beginning to wonder, are you just coding without even understanding the concept of what you are doing behind the scenes? At every point of the basics you are even knowing, you should actually understand the concept and where it's actually applied. For example, so separation of consent, actually putting items on the basis of specificity, on the basis of how it should actually work code wise is also very important. Trying to understand patterns. If you are using builder patterns on the basis of dependency injection and whatnot. If you want to get to this space, you should actually know that many people are actually struggling to get a job and they just want to put themselves on the forefront to make sure that they prove themselves over time. So you need to have some set of both fair and unfair advantage to an extent. So put yourself in an idea of trying to get better, knowing what you are doing, understanding what is behind the scenes, like why things actually are made to be the way they are currently, so that you can actually be able to have that advantage to explain yourself when the cases may be. Another thing I got to notice is a lot of people do not put themselves in a position of trying to manifest their experiences in the assessment that they are being given to work on. So I had an experience of the company I work with giving some candidates assessment tests to work on to do it for but I think about 10 days. It's just an e-commerce system that has an opportunity where you can be able to place order, add to cart and all those stuff. So, but the crazy thing about it is there were people that I interviewed that had almost 10 years of experience. Other individuals who claim to have actually worked with big organizations. Like there was a particular guy who made a statement and said that he had been working with to fusing multiple payment gateways together so that people do not necessarily have the opportunity to be installing payment gateway one after the other, which was kind of awesome. But when I looked at the assessment that he actually presented to us, I got to notice that while trying to add to cart, if you're trying to put the quantity, you can actually from the API insert a -1. You know what happens after then? The customer might end up not paying. So imagine you're putting yourself on a level of not even wanting to pay close attention to the little assessment that is being given to you. It's something you actually need to watch out for. Put yourself in a position where you can be able to manifest the idea of how to think ahead before you are being told of some activities. So and I, as a person who is trying to even do this interview, I'm trying to put myself in a position of how you're actually going to be conscious enough to work with us in the organization. So let's say, for example, we have three environments. We have the dev environment, we have the staging environment, we have the production environment. I don't know if they have actually had experiences of working in organizations, but if they actually had all these things in mind to an extent, they'll get to know that if you're pushing a kind of code like that deals with an e-commerce that has a quantity where you can actually put a minus sign, a negative number without even trying to validate it, then you know what's going to be happening when it actually gets to production. A lot of things would get to happen. You don't need to tell a product designer or a QA person to actually test it before that happens. So there are some things you need to basically look on. So after my interview on Tuesday the following week, I decided to go to Twitter and I saw Yash making a tweet about how he wanted to place an order with a delivery company and he got a minus sign in the total order. It was kind of crazy because this is actually a system in production. You don't want to put yourself in this kind of mess while being a developer. Yes, it could be an oversight, but I think there were a lot of things that were actually wrong, especially for an organization that is very, very experienced. So you need to watch out for all these things. You need to put yourself in a position where you do not fall a victim of organizations running at a loss. Very, very important, please. I think it's important for you to put yourself in a position where you can be able to leverage on your experiences to apply results to the assessment that you're being given, kind of. So it shows that you've been working, it shows that you've actually put yourself in a position of wanting to, um, that you've put a lot of efforts in the seriousness to get the job done. Another part is the idea of consistency. Consistency is very, very important. Why? Because it gives you an opportunity to avoid the point of oversight and have reasons for doing a couple of things. And it's important you can be able to have those reasons and have the ability to adjust your idea of what your current consistency is like so that you can actually improve later on in future. And while you're performing those ideas of consistency, you shouldn't judge your reasons for applying those consistency because of the fact that you study computer science or because of the fact that um, someone else is doing it. That is what you know at that moment. So don't judge your reasons on the basis of the fact that you've been doing this for that long because it can actually be improved over time. I've always said this that there's always room for continuous learning and you have to actually calm yourself down and be humble enough to actually learn as much as you need to, kind of. So I've had a lot of people who will tell me, I've studied computer science and I've been programming for the last 10 years. That's not enough reason for you to actually judge your reasons for consistency. You should actually have some technical reasons why you're actually doing some activities. Imagine you are trying to place a form request, for example, and you apply the form request to a controller, and in the next place where I expect you to actually apply a form request, you're not applying a form request. You're just importing the overall request facade on the system. So that shows some certain level of inconsistencies that will actually happen in your code base, and it's important for you to actually watch out for that. If you're going to be using a form request in your system, make sure that whenever you are trying to do some certain level of validation, those form requests are actually applied at the entirety of your code base, and don't be judging on the basis of the fact that the reason why you did it at some parts and the reason why you didn't do it at some parts is because of the fact that you felt like due to your experience is validated enough. No, it's not enough reason. You have to make sure that you are consistent as much as possible in the entirety of what you're doing. There's what we call the code culture. The idea of consistency gives the interviewer or the technical recruiter the idea that you can be able to imbibe your own culture and also fit into another person's culture. Inconsistency is another thing when you, especially when they're actually looking at your code base. Try to be sensitive at the beginning of the interview to figure out how much the intensity of the interaction is going to be. Sometimes some interviewers may not even understand what you are doing. They might just give you a coding test and they might just want to predict your level of independence when it comes to working with them in the organization. Some of them just want to figure out your level of communication. If it's more of like an interactive session, they will just want to get an idea of how much you're able to communicate. I think it's important you get to understand how sensitive it is, and if possible you can try as much as possible to ask questions and say, okay, would you like this interview to be more interactive, or you want to actually gauge my level of independence? And like, it gives you an opportunity to figure out how you can be comfortable in the interview. I think it's very, very important you get to be as sensitive as that, so that you can know what you're going to be looking forward to while in the interview from the beginning to the entirety of it. I think that is actually very, very important. On the basis of the fact you're trying to apply for the role, never show your inactiveness in that role. Like, for example, the job role states that they're looking for a backend Node.js developer. You shouldn't say, it's been a long time I did Node.js. I did Node.js 3 years ago. I'm currently doing PHP, just to show that you can be able to walk through the idea of PHP and Node.js. You should actually pin on the idea of the fact that you're a Node.js developer and you're a backend engineer, and don't state it as if it was some they are forcing you to actually come back to the role to come do. You're the one that is trying to apply for that role. So show your activeness, show the things you've actually done so far in that Node.js, and do not rely on the idea of the fact that you are currently active on another language that has nothing to do with the role. It's very, very important for you to note this. Also, try as much as possible to make sure that you manifest the entirety of that role in order for you to prove to your interviewer that you've actually been active before even trying to make that application. And also try to make sure that you are manifesting the idea of that role in the interview to show your activeness even before applying for that role. If you're in this part of the video at the moment, I really want to appreciate you for being patient while listening to everything I'm actually saying in this video. Please see the need to actually like this video, subscribe, and also click the notification bells for more videos like this in order for you to create the career projection for yourself and also leverage on the idea of being a creator in the creator economy.